Hello and welcome to another episode of Thick Slices and Deep Cuts. On this evening's show, I'm going to be ranking and reviewing the catalog, most of the catalog of space rockers OZRIC Tentacles. OZRIC Tentacles come from the UK, Somerset, England, although I think now they're technically based out of Scotland and did spend some time in the United States and Colorado, but basically from England, from the UK. The main man here is Ed Wynn. He is the mastermind pretty much behind the band and has been there since the beginning, which it says 83. They have their first album out in 85. So they've been around for 38, 40 years basically. And they've put out, if you go on Prog Archives, it says they have 22 studio albums, but one of those albums I don't consider an album, so that would make it about 21 albums. But man, they've got a lot of other stuff. If you just take original music from here and there, they probably have a couple more albums of material, but just a very prolific band for the last, going back to the 80s. Every decade here they've got things coming out, and it's been kind of a family affair with Ed Wynn. Early on, his brother is at Roley on bass. Later on here, his ex-wife, I guess, Brandy on bass. And these days, he and his son Silas are really driving the ship for this band. But just a really cool band. I call them, I'm labeling them space rock. That's just an easy label. I mean, they do everything. They're kind of progressive. They're a jam band. They do bits of reggae. They do just tons of ambience. They definitely do the space rock thing. But just a really cool band. The thing I love about OZRIC Tentacles, and the reason I wanted to discuss them on the channel, is just another one of these bands that there's only one that sounds like OZRIC Tentacles. And that's what I love about these bands. They kind of carve out their own sound, their own style, and they kind of just follow their own stylistic direction without concern for anything else that's going on in the musical world. But we'll get started. I'm going to rank basically the 13 albums that I own are the ones I'm going to rank. And the reason I'm going to rank the ones I own is, and I'll reveal this later in the show, but there are some albums I'm just not as familiar with, and I didn't want to wait forever to do this show and rank the other 7 or 8 or 9 albums, but rather to just talk about them at the end. But I think 13 albums to go through is plenty. And also this ranking, just forget it. This is just I'm going to go in a certain order and discuss each album fairly quickly, but the ranking was almost impossible. Again, this is one of those situations where maybe like the top 4 you kind of knew, even though that order could change, but you kind of knew your top 4. 5 through 13 they're pretty much interchangeable. These are all good albums. Even their bad albums are good. They don't have a bad album. They're very consistent. Some of the albums sound pretty similar to one another, but that's okay. We love the OZRIC Tentacles sound, and they do kind of shift from over time. The sound kind of shifts a little bit, but they have, I guess, 5 phases, I would call. They have this very early phase before they were signed to a label. Then they have this like glory heyday from about 89 to 94. Then they have like this third period that was a little more digital, although they were still rocking out, and that's from like 95 to 2000, somewhere in there. And then they kind of start up a 4th phase in 04, so kind of a new lineup, new direction that goes. Then there's a brief, or the longest pause between albums, and now they've put out 3 albums since 2015, I believe, 2015, 2016, in what I call their new phase, their 5th phase. They got 3 albums out from that. So the way I kind of broke this down, the way I look at it, is they have these 5 phases. But enough said on that. We'll just get started. Again, man, this album I have coming in at 13 is certainly more important for their career than it is. It's probably ranked as one of their top albums as far as their career is concerned. But for purposes of today, number 13 is going to be their first major label, or their first release on an actual label. It's called Pungent Effulgent from '89. They had done 5 albums before this, self-released on cassette. They get signed to a label, and they put this one out, and this is probably when the rest of the world starts to get to know OZRIC Tentacles. And again, it sounds totally, if all you knew was the most recent 2 or 3 albums from OZRIC Tentacles, and you put this one on from '89, you could still tell it's them. It's still definitely an Ed Wynn style of just, jamming out. You've got the reggae stuff thrown in there. You've got the guitar solo, jammy stuff. All the tempos, all the grooves are great. Dissolution OI is like an older song re-recorded. Same thing for Kick Monk, which is on here. Those are 2 of the re-recorded tracks from the earlier albums. The Domes of Gabal, Flarn Dawn. So this is good. The only reason I have it at 13 is one, I just for whatever reason doesn't click with me quite as much as maybe the top 10 albums, but it's still good and I still enjoy it. So there's really nothing wrong with this. Maybe the production isn't quite as slick and sophisticated as albums that would come after this, but it's still good. Great, I'm sure diehard fans of the band, I feel like I'm a diehard fan, but I think other fans of the band might hold this one way higher than 13th out of like 21 or 22 or whatever the number is. I've got it 13th today, but it's good. Rolly, Ed's brother on bass here. He's a really good bass player. More about that on another album. But so today, coming in at number 13, I've got Pungent Effulgent from '89, their first release on a proper label. Okay, coming in at number 12. I don't necessarily know why this one's coming in at 12 because I do enjoy it. But I'm going to go with Become the Other from '95. Whereas I feel like this began their second phase, this I feel like begins a third phase. It's a lot more digital. I don't know if there were real drums recorded in the studio, but things sound a lot more digital here, which is cool. But it's just a little bit different from the previous albums. So thus, my thought that this kind of begins a new phase for the band. Cat DNA is a great song. It's just great. It's just a ripping good opener. I guess it's pronounced Gedengi. That's a good one. Wob Glass is classic. The nice, slow, cool title track. It's great. There's really nothing to say bad about this album. And in fact, as I'm talking about it now, I'm kind of wondering why I have it ranked 12. It's got plenty of good. Cat DNA is classic. I think the title track is probably classic. Wob Glass is really good. Gedengi. So, coming in at number 12 today, but you could make a case that it cracked the top 10 for sure. Beginning of this new phase where things are just a little bit more digital than they were before. I think before it was still an organic kind of band. Playing to a click track or whatever so they get those sequenced samples to go, but this one just feels a little bit more digital than anything before this. Also, artwork in the early days by an artist named Blim, B-L-I-M. He would do the artwork up until about 2000. They may have done 1 or 2 covers since then, but I think they did everything up through 99, and then there was a shift in artwork. But this is definitely back in the day classic artwork for the OZRICs. But so I've got Become the Other coming in at number 12, but it's a really good album. Let's see. All right, moving to number 11 here. This is considered a classic too. I'm going with Strangitude from 1991. So this is part of that, what I call the second phase. That started with Pungent Effulgent. So this is their third album on a proper label. And I kind of mentioned it in comparison with Pungent Effulgent. They seem kind of like a pair, even though they weren't recorded back to back. but White Rhino Tea, good way to open it. That's also a re-recorded track from an earlier, very early album. Sploosh is classic. Probably my favorite track on there. Saucers is really good. The title track's pretty good. A little bit more of that ambient kind of thing going on. Bizarre and Space Between Your Ears. This one has a bonus disc, but for the proper album, I think the first 4. It's only 6 tracks, but I think White Rhino Tea is good. Sploosh is the best song on here. Saucers is really good. The title track is really good. I enjoy it. It's a much better production than Pungent and Fulgent. This is their 3rd album with the proper label behind it. More of that cool artwork from Blim. I don't really know why it's coming in at 11. Again, it's just when I started ranking these and I just started putting stuff up at the top, and all the classics at the top, and when I looked down, this one had just, been surpassed by some others, but there's nothing wrong with this one. I think a lot of people consider this yet another classic, and certainly a classic era for the band, right here in 1991. So it's coming in at 11 today, but it could be somebody's top 5, especially if you got into the band during this era, the second phase of the band. And if you love the second phase of the band, this is definitely a top 5. So today it's at 11, but again, don't worry about the ranking. This is just the way I'm going to kind of go about the albums, and really the only sure thing I had for this list was maybe the top 4. But there you go. Coming in at 11, Strangitude from 1991. All right, here we go. Starting the top 10. This was tough because I can't really separate this one from some of the other ones already, but number 10 I'm going with Curious Corn from 1997. More awesome Blim artwork. Probably my favorite era of Blim's artwork is right about here. I don't know why this isn't higher or lower or anything like that, but Ulay Grove is a classic song. Love that one. Afro Clonk has a cool tempo to it. Again, they're really good about hitting these tempos. Whatever the tempo is, they seem to get that energy off of the groove, no matter what the tempo. The title track is great. Identity is classic. Papyrus. On most of these albums, I'm pretty sure it happens on every one of these albums I've talked about, but they always do like an Eastern sounding song. So Papyrus is definitely that sort of, that whatever that is, that Arabian vibe, that Eastern vibe, whatever that is. So pretty much on every album you're going to get that flavor too. And with Afro Clonk you get that kind of world sounding groove to it too. So they're always kind of trying to give you different looks, even if it's a look that you've heard from them before from a previous album. They're always trying to give you a few different styles on these albums, which I really appreciate. So again, Curious Corn, it could have been higher. I guess it could have been lower too, but it's a really good album. Cool artwork. 1997, just part of this third phase, I call it, that kind of began to become the other. But there you go. Curious Corn from 1997 coming in at number 10. And because you can tell here, I can't really differentiate or decide if one's better than the other, but coming in at number 9 is the album that came after Curious Corn, and that is Waterfall Cities. Again, very cool artwork by Blim. It's hard to figure out for me which one is better than the other. They go together pretty well. I guess Coily comes out good energy, like all of their opening tracks. Jingu, I guess that's how you pronounce it. Again, one of these like Eastern flavored songs. Waterfall City is great. Chai, Aura Borealis to end it. Spiral Mind. So just really good. I don't know if this is considered a classic from their catalog, but I think it's considered another solid release from them, and it's got all of the classic touches that the OZRICs do on their albums, where they give you that the good high energy burner to open it, but then they give you those different flavors throughout the album. By the way, Ed Wynn is just, you never, when they talk about guitar players, you never hear his name mentioned with all of these other rock and metal people, but he's just carved out his own way of doing things. He kind of keeps his guitar solos kind of low in the mix, but he's got just tons of awesome riff ideas, and he just kind of goes for it on the leads. I don't know who he reminds me of, I'm not saying he's like Steve Vai or Joe Satriani, but he kind of comes out flying like that, but it's got more of a Jimi Hendrix almost sort of attitude about it, but he's an excellent guitarist that nobody ever talks about. And it seems like today, he's like in his early 60s. I feel like he's on top of his game now in his early 60s, more than ever before. But so there you go. What is this, number 9 today? Waterfall Cities from 1999. This was the last artwork by Blim, at least as far as Blim had done every album cover up through Waterfall Cities, and then in 2000, I guess, Ed Wynn decided to change direction. I don't know if Blim has done any albums since then, but this was kind of the end of the run for these types of album covers for the OZRICs. But there you go, Waterfall Cities coming in at number 9. Okay, and again, hard to differentiate these. Coming in at number 8 today is the album after Waterfall Cities, The Hidden Step, and different album cover. I think Ed did this album cover, and I think that's his cat, Pixel. And there's a song on here called Pixel Dream, which is really good. Hola Hedron is another good energy one to start it. The Hidden Step, title track's great. Tight Spin's good. Again, Ashlandi Ball, I guess that's how you pronounce it, and Top Cut. And again, you've got these, the world flavors again, coming in. Those good Eastern flavors mixed in with what they do best. Again, just getting more and more, this is what I would call the end of the third phase, right here. It kind of connects with these, although the album covers are very different. I feel like these are all connected. Become the Other, Curious Corn, Waterfall Cities, and The Hidden Step, they're all kind of connected. Stylistically, they're very close. A lot of OZRIC albums are very similar, but this little bunch of albums seem kind of connected. But just a really good album. I think the reason this is ranked 8th ahead of the others is just the production. The sonic quality of this one's even better, as it should be, because it's 2000. Those other albums were a few years before. But there you go. So for today, coming in at number 8, The Hidden Step from 2000. And this kind of ended, I'm not sure who was on the recording for the next album altogether or who was a full-time member, but this was kind of the end of a certain lineup as well. So this was the end of what I call the third phase. There you go. So number 8, The Hidden Step from 2000. And after The Hidden Step, I think in 01, just to satisfy these obligations with their record label at the time, there was an EP called Pyramidion. But it's really just one new song. That's cool, and that will be part of this phase. And I'm not ranking Swirly Termination. This also came out around 01 or 2000, 01, somewhere in there, just to satisfy the record label's quota. But the band doesn't even look at that album, so I don't look at it either. It's just a bunch of cutting room floor ideas from like the 90s. And it's not terrible, as nothing OZRIC have done is terrible, but you can just see why they didn't include them on the albums that they recorded them. For those sessions, you can just see why they just were on the cutting room floor and left off the album. Or they just weren't complete. It doesn't sound like they were mixed or had any detailed overdubs or anything like that. But if you can't get enough of the OZRICs, there is Swirly Termination out there. Definitely like a B-side sort of compilation. All right, here we go. Number 7. We're going to the album after The Hidden Step, so they're just in order here. And Spirals in Hyperspace from 04. I think John Egan, who was their longtime flute guy, he's on here a little bit, but I don't know if he's really in the band at this point. I believe they have a different bass player. then Zia Gilini. I hope I'm pronouncing the name right, but he was on all these. He is not, I believe, on this one. But this one, again, just getting even more digital. I feel like they're starting a new phase here. The Spirals in Hyperspace. Oakham, I guess that's how you pronounce it. That one's really good. Slinky is one of my favorite songs they've done. The title track, Chewier. Psychic Chasm. Akasha, again, another world-sounding song. I believe Steve Hillage, formerly of Gong, is on that song. And apparently, I've never really listened to Gong, but I know they're like a spacey, space rock, weird band from the 70s. But I noticed that OZRIC Tentacles and Gong just finished up a tour, probably in the UK, somewhere over in Europe. But anyway, so Steve Hillage is on here. So again, it's tough to differentiate, any of these albums as far as which one I like better. So I've kind of been going in order here. But for today, I'll go with their album from 2004, the beginning of this fourth phase, in my opinion. Spirals in Hyperspace, coming in at number 7 for today. All right, just keep going down the list here. So coming in at number 6, we're going back to the end of the second phase, and we're going to Arborescence. Yagbar Og, one of my favorite songs they've ever done. That it doesn't get any better than that. The title track's great. It's just kind of like an ambient atmospheric. Is it Myriapod, I guess is how you pronounce that one. That's classic. Al Saluk. This is the end, in my opinion, the end of the second phase. I think there is a definite difference between this album in 94 and this album in 95. I think there's definitely a shift. But they are at the top of their game in this style of this second phase. They're just at the top of their game. It may not be quite as classic as some other albums from that phase, but it's just rock solid. And the second phase, by the way, is one of their best. If you're trying to figure out what is just totally classic OZRIC Tentacles, this era from like 89 to 94 is definitely a good place to start. It's where I started, and I got into the band. So there you go. I don't know what else to say about it other than it's just really, it's the OZRICs the way you want to hear them, without being totally taken over by the digital, electronica aspect of things. I mean, it's definitely, the ear candy is definitely there in that vein, but they're still using acoustic drums. They're still, the bass lines, the guitar lines, it's still pretty organic at this point. So there you go. Coming in at number 6 for today, Arborescence from 1994. Okay, so my number 5 pick is an album that came out not too long ago, 2020. It's called Space for the Earth. I got this version. Oh, that's the one with the bonus stuff. They said Blim is not doing their artwork, but man, that sure looks like a Blim drawing right there. Cool new logo there. So Space for the Earth. I think what I like about this is I do like their modern sound. But this one's a little more organic. Of this new phase, this 5th phase, they have 3 albums in. This feels definitely the most organic of the 3. And plus, there's a run of songs here. Humboldt Current, Popscape, and Climbing Plants. Those 3 tracks in a row are some of the best. You can say what you want about maybe this album isn't classic because it only came out 3.5 years ago, or everything's all digital now. Well, this one's a little bit more, organic. Plus, just the run of those 3 songs, it doesn't get much better than that, in my opinion. The title track's not too bad. Harmonic Steps that end it is not too bad either. So, and if you get the one that they released a year later. Has this 33-minute jam with Ed and his son Silas Neptune called 6 Worlds. It's a 33-minute jam. I don't pretend to know it inside and out, but I've listened to it in passing, probably, you know, less than a handful of times, but it does sound cool. Glad I have it. So I'm going to put Space for the Earth at number 5 for today. I'm not saying it's as classic as some of this other stuff. I'm just saying it sounds good, and those 3 tracks in a row in the middle of the album really put it, move it up the chart for me. All right, now we're down to the final 4, and I knew these 4. To me, these are the classic ones. So here we go. Coming in at number 4, their album from 1990, Erpland. This album is probably Rolly Wynn's best bass playing. His bass on this album is just frantic. It's heavy, but it's cool. It's groovy. Also, this album, I guess it's not their longest album, but man, it's like 73 minutes long. Eternal Wheel is a great way to start it. I found out later on that, oh, that's a re-recording. Again, one of these songs that's re-recorded from an earlier self-released album. Sunscape is great. The Throb is classic. The title track is probably a top 3, top 5 song. The title track, Erpland. Toltec Spring. I think what drives this album is it's really, they improved immensely upon Pungent Effulgent, their first proper label release. They seem to really knock it out of the park here in this second phase. And they've got basically a double album, 73-minute album. I mean, and plus Eternal Wheel, Sunscape, The Throb, and Erpland. And you could probably put in Toltec Spring or Tidal Convergence, but again, this one's driven by the strength of the fact that it has these classic songs all on one album. So much like Space for the Earth, it's like, yeah, you could say what you want, but it's got these songs in the middle that are just the best. It's kind of a similar thing here, where the songs that are good are great. My favorite songs from the band reside on this album, reside on this, reside on here. So that's what's going to put it to number 4. This is one of their most popular albums, I believe. I believe it's one of their top. Somebody's probably saying this is the best they ever were, was right here. But like I said, my top 4 here are all in this classic. Definitely considered a classic. So there you go. Coming in at number 4 from 1990, Erpland. Okay. I don't know if others consider this one a classic, but this is what got me back into the band. I had enjoyed them and kind of forgot about them, I guess, for a little while. And then they come out with this new look and this new era, and it's called Technicians of the Sacred. And this is technically the longest album because it's 2 discs and it's longer than 73 minutes. But this is definitely them in like their digital phase now. Silas is fully on board. Brandy Wynn's on bass. This is definitely a family style album. But the high pass is good. Butterfly Garden is cool. Far Memory is great. Switchback is great. I think Far Memory, Switchback, and Zen-like Creature to end the whole thing are 3 of my favorites. I think Butterfly Garden is really good. Zing Bong is cool. The Unusual Village is pretty wild. Smiling Potion. Everything on here is just really interesting or just catchy or just great. And I just remember being completely blown away by this when it came out. Because up until this came out, I was just, I won't name all the albums yet, but when this came out, I was like, wow, this is great. It's hard to compare it to stuff from like the second phase or any of that, but I just knew that on its own, this was great, and it got me right back into the band. So if nothing else, this is coming in at number 3 because it's an excellent album. It's a new direction for the band, but it just got my interest in the entire catalog of the band. Got me back into the OZRICs at this point. So there you go. What is this? 2015, I want to say. Yeah, 2015. The beginning of this new phase. Very digital sounding phase with Silas on board. And I've got Technicians of the Sacred. Man, the final 2. This is the number one, but I've got it at number 2. From 1993, probably their most famous album, Jurassic Shift. This is the epitome of their sound, of their classic sound as an organic band. Sun Hair is great. Stretchy is great. Feng Shui is great. The title track, Jurassic Shift, is great. It's just, I compare this to Earthland, much like, even though they weren't recorded back to back, I compare Strangitude to Pungent and Fulgent, even though they were not back to back. There was an album in between them. And I compare Earthland to Jurassic Shift, even though there was an album in between them. And I think Arborescence just does a nice job of doing a nice overview of that second phase from 89 to 94. But this just has, like I said, probably 4 just absolute, for me, absolute classic tracks. Sun Hair, Stretchy, Jurassic Shift. Those are 3 of my, top 10 songs from them. I don't know how many songs you get, like 12, your favorite 12 OZRIC songs. 3 of them are sitting right here. Something similar to Earthland. 3 of them are sitting on this album. Same thing with this one. 3 are sitting on this album. That's kind of how I determine which ones are my favorites, or my top 5 albums have all these songs just sitting on. So there you go. This is probably their most popular album. Rolly Wynn was out of the band when this was released, but I believe he's on 1 or 2 of the songs on there, which is a shame, because he was a really, he was a key piece to the band, in those early days. And like I said, Earthland was probably his highlight. Strangitude's a great album. He was on Pungent and Fulgent, all those early ones. But so there you go. For today, coming in at number 2, classic album from 1993, Jurassic Shift. And my number 1 album, can't believe it. Usually when you have a band that's been around for a while, you go with those classics. They're 40 years into this thing, 20 some odd albums, and I'm going with their most recent one from this year, Lotus Unfolding. It's all Ed and his son Silas doing all of the recordings. They obviously have a different band live, but it's them doing everything. They're running the show here. And Storm in a Teacup, if anybody watching hasn't, if you haven't gone through this album, Storm in a Teacup, incredible. It's got so much musical information going on. Sonically, it sounds incredible. It sounds so sophisticated. The songs are super catchy. Ed Wynn's never sounded better. All of the drums, the tempos, the rhythms, all of the sound effect, ear candy, everything's great. Deep Blue Shades, so catchy. The title track, slower, got the flute in there, but it sounds incredible. Crumple Penny, just another off-the-wall one. One of Ed Wynn's best ripping solos, about, 2.5, 3 minutes into that one. Green Incantation, some great acoustic guitar. And it finishes with the shortest song of the album. These songs are long, but the shortest one, Burundi Spaceport. But, for my money, this is just, maybe it's the newness factor. Maybe you got to give it time. But for me right now, this is the one. This is just like hit play and let it go. Everything is a greatest hit. Everything is a classic. So I'm going with Lotus Unfolding is my number 1. So real quick, on the 13 that I own, 13 you've got Pungent and Fulgent. Number 12 you've got Become the Other. 11 you've got Strangitude. These are all great albums. Number 10, Curious Corn. Number 9, Waterfall Cities. At number 8, The Hidden Step. Number 7, Spirals in Hyperspace. At number 6, Arborescence. Number 5, Space for the Earth. Number 4, Earthland. Number 3, Technicians of the Sacred. Number 2, Jurassic Shift. And number 1, Lotus Unfolding. In the albums I didn't rank, there were 3 albums they did after Spirals in Hyperspace. I guess you could consider them part of that 4th phase, but it's The Floor's Too Far Away, The Yum Yum Tree, and Paper Monkeys. And I think the reason I kind of stopped listening to the OZRICs is because those 3 albums, for whatever reason, just did not connect with me. They sound like OZRIC albums. There's nothing wrong with them. They've got little moments here and there, but for whatever reason, they just never clicked with me. Like Spirals in Hyperspace or the stuff they've done since, or anything else. I don't know why that is. Maybe somebody can explain it to me, but so I didn't rank those in the top 13 because they didn't connect with me. But they sound like OZRIC albums. They've got sort of that digital vibe going on. They've got the ear candy, it's fine. They just seemed a little thinner, and nothing really jumped out and grabbed me on those albums. But I'm sure, there are a few moments on those, but for whatever reason, they just never clicked with me. So I never went on and bought the album or tried to force myself to like it any more than just to say that it's not bad, it's not good, it's just kind of there for me. And then the other thing, the other 5 albums I didn't rank were those early ones that they did self-financed on cassette, just because I don't pretend to know those albums that well. But I will say this, unlike the Yum Yum Tree and Floors Too Far Away, Paper Monkeys, I do like that early stuff better. There's a cool energy in Herb Songs, their first album, the Red album cover from '85. You can totally tell it's them, even in the beginning, even if they're just recording self-financed on, and releasing them on cassettes, you can tell it's OZRIC Tentacles immediately. So that's really cool. Tantric Obstacles, Live Ethereal Serial, Sliding Gliding Worlds in the bits between the bits. I did just pick this up, but I don't pretend to know it completely, but this is sort of an overview of that era. Is After Swish. So I've at least got this to kind of tap into that. And some of those tracks were re-recorded, like 4 or 5 were re-recorded. But this is cool. I need to listen to this more. I got this probably a month ago. And then there's also this box set called Vitamin Enhanced, which Ed Wynn just remastered here during the pandemic. That's probably the way to just get the rest of that part of the catalog, is just to buy that box set remastered with probably all the line items too. So that's why I didn't rank those 8. The 3 between like 06, 09, 11, they never clicked with me. And then the really early stuff that I like. I like what I hear. I know it's raw and self-financed, but I like what I hear. I just don't pretend to know it well enough to rank it ahead of all these albums that, by the way, these 13 albums I do enjoy, and I do like what I'm hearing from those very early albums. So pretty much everything OZRIC Tentacles has done has been good. And some of the stuff is just, absolutely great. One final thing to mention here is this video, live at the Pong Masters Ball from '02, I want to say. I think the bass player is still Zia, so he's a classic member of the band for some time. Not sure about the drummer or the keyboard player on the video, but it's a good show. This is, I guess, the main album that would have been out at this time was The Hidden Step. Pyramidion was the EP, which they play on here, but I guess this was during this is a weird, they're in between these phases, because they're playing Oakham from Spirals in Hyperspace, but that's not out yet. That album isn't out yet. Identity, Herbland, Oakham, Myriapod, It's a Huppo World, Pixel Dream, The Domes of Cabal, Pyramidion, Saucers, Dissolution, Sploosh, Tuck Hut, Kickmuck, and The Throb. So it's just a really good show all the way through. So that's been something I've enjoyed for a while. But so there you go. This was just a chance to discuss OZRIC Tentacles. I'd wanted to discuss them for a while, but I just didn't know how to go about it. It's tough to rank these albums that are all really good. But then this year with Lotus Unfolding coming out and being as great as it is, I thought, okay, now's the time to do a show and do a ranking on OZRIC Tentacles. So there you go. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.